Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason. I'm here to bring the retrospective for Ortega versus Korean Zombie and the look ahead to UFC 254, where Khabib Nurmagomedov, the Eagle, is going to be taking on the human highlight himself, Justin Gaethje, for the 155-pound strap. But we first got to talk about the retrospect. And, it was kind of a night of silver linings. We did not really all that well. We went 4-7, not good numbers. However, there were some weird calls in there. I think some bad decisions. We got to kind of push that aside, though. We got 2-1 on the Patreon. We nailed our lock of the night, which was Park. We got the main event. We did pretty well, all things considered, for the stuff that I really thought was the highest probability. Like I said, 2-1 on the Patreon with the highest probability ones. So I think we did pretty well overall, despite having the ho-hum numbers. Let's get into it, though. Here's the show. All right, and one that I was not confident about at all going in, Brian Ortega ends up stealing the show. I mean, sometimes, I talk over the numbers, right? I'm the color commentary behind or in front of the statistics. That way you don't have to hear me talk about stats all day. And I was really concerned about my heart pick for Brian Ortega. The numbers kind of shown through here, and made Zombie look like the lesser man, which is exactly what Ortega did. Although I don't think anybody expected Ortega to look that good. 2 knockdowns, 3 takedowns, 127 strikes, outdoing Korean Zombie more than 2-1 in the striking department. I mean, Ortega looked sharp as hell. He looked like the undefeated guy that was going into the Holloway fight. He just looked phenomenal. There was nothing in Brian Ortega's game that I thought had holes in it. If that guy maybe fought Holloway again, he could potentially win. Now, it's hard to say. Styles make fights. Zombie's obviously a different fighter than Holloway, but I think you gotta say, hey, Brian Ortega stepped away from the game for over a year, going on 2, and he improved a lot in that time. He was given a choice for sure, and he went on the path to pick up, sharpen all of his tools, put him in that toolkit, ready to strike, ready to kill in the cage, and he proved that he is an amazing number 1 contender at 145 pounds. And now I think, honestly, we're just going to wait for him to take some time off, and then he's going to fight Volkanovski. I think that's the fight to make. Ortega looked dominant. He's only ever lost to the champion, and I think that now is the time for him to take on a guy like Volkanovski that has beaten Holloway twice, the former GOAT at 145 pounds, or, current GOAT, I guess, if you will, of that era. But that is the fight to make for sure, and I am looking forward to calling that one whenever it takes place sometime in 2021, which hopefully won't be too late in the year. All right, moving on to our co-main. We have Jessica Andraj looking like a human highlight reel herself. She beat the crap out of Katlyn Chookagian. There's no other way to put it. 1 knockdown, 2 takedowns, amazing power striking. Obviously, the liver shots are what really put her down. I mean, it was just phenomenal stuff at Andraj. You would have never guessed that she was going up in weight to look that dominant. I mean, maybe the weight cuts were holding her back for a while, but I mean, holy hell, she does look ready to fight Valentina, 125 pounds. I mean, Chookagian just recently fought Valentina. That's how good Katlyn is to make it to that point. And so now I think, honestly, we're going to get that title fight. I think she's going to overstep. I think what JoJo Calderwood was supposed to fight for the title. No, I'm sorry. I think, honestly, Andraj is now the fight to make there. And I think, honestly, it excites Valentina a little more if I had to guess. But holy hell. I mean, the takedowns were there. She picked up Chookagian right into the air despite her 5'1.5" frame. I mean, she's built like a tank. She's a little tank, but she's built like a tank. And I said, on Twitter and I think on the podcast here, as long as she got inside, was able to score the takedowns, it would work out. Chookagian could not keep her at range, could not use that 6-inch reach advantage that she had, and couldn't even use her big frame to hold her off of her. It was Andraj's night. She was all over it, and it was a solid call on our behalf. Speaking of solid calls, we also got Jimmy Crute as well, defeating Modestas Bukauskas. He knocked him out 2 minutes in. Not much to say about this one. Knocked him down twice, 17 strikes over the 2 minutes to Modestas' 7. So great short night for Jimmy Crute. Get some performance of the night money along with Andraj, and then Gurim Kudeladze and Mateus Gamrot pick up the fight of the night money, just as a sidebar to that. But Jimmy Crute's our last win for a while. We really went on a slide here. There was some weird calls in between. Let's talk about them, though. James Krause, Claudio Silva. This one wasn't a weird call. I just think Silva didn't show up to his full potential. He was one of my he was the one we missed on the Patreon. He was an underdog. I thought at plus money Claudio Silva was good. He had high probability of winning, but he did not look like the guy who's shown up in the past. He looked like the 38-year-old that he is. He looked like a guy pushing 40 that's lost a step or two against a very competitive, high, volume striker, James Krause, throwing 94 punches. And even though Silva was able to get a couple takedowns in there, he was not able to do anything with him. He couldn't sap the gas tank, and he looked tired, very, very tired going into that third round. And really, honestly, once round 2 closed, I figured there was really no way, no real chance in hell that Krause was going to, go down in this one. I could not see a way for Silva to win. So it is what it is. Silva did not perform to his numbers. For a guy that hadn't lost since 2007, I believe, his undefeated streak has now come to an end. And I think we overestimated him, and his numbers, honestly, were much overestimated as well for for the kind of guy he is today. I think he's going to be a guy on the decline. So we'll see how it goes. Who knows? He could bounce back. We'll see how things play out in the future for Silva, but we take an L. And another one, a close fight, this one, Jonathan Martinez defeats Thomas Almeida. Martinez's boxing, I think, was just a little bit better all night. He landed the better strikes. He outstruck him 73-64. It was a tight fight, but at no point I thought Almeida really was gaining momentum. He was letting some counter shots. He was, hitting some good leg kicks. However, Martinez just had his number in the boxing game all fight long. And then one I think we should have honestly gotten correct. Gorim Kutsalade was outstruck 37-52 and was taken down 5 times. Now, he did score 1 knockdown, but I don't know if that was enough to offset these numbers here. 5 takedowns, 52 strikes. In fact, Gorim himself said that he did not win that fight, okay? He said that Gamrot did win in the post-fight interview. He wasn't happy with himself. He got a split decision, but it wasn't something he was happy about. And I'm not upset about it. We didn't. This wasn't one of the Patreon picks. Our picks were, just to hit them up real quick here, we had Park, we had Jimmy Crute, and then we ended up losing on Silva. But I thought Gamrot won this fight. I thought it was a bad call. It's one that probably should have went back to us. But it was a split decision. It was close. It wasn't a robbery. I just didn't see it going that way. Maybe you saw it differently. Please write me in the comments if you saw it that way for Gorim to win, but I personally did not. And another one we just got flat out wrong. Julian Robertson defeats Pollyanna Patello. In this one here, Patello looked really good in the first round. Basically did all of her damage, all of her work in that first round. Her striking looked good. She was able to keep Robertson off of her, prevent some takedowns, keep it a competitive fight. I thought she honestly went out and won the first round. Then Robertson just hit cruise control. She made the right adjustments. She got the takedowns. She held her down for all of round 2, for most of round 3. And, once the striking wasn't enough, once the power wasn't enough to, make Robertson hit the back foot, it just wasn't going to go her way. And again, we ended up overestimating Patello here, Patello striking, and underestimating Robertson, who put on a spectacular performance. I'm sure we'll see more out of her very soon. And one we did get correct, Jun Park defeats John Phillips. It was just a crushing fight. There's something like 300 plus strikes thrown in this one. It was just ridiculous. Basically, Park held Phillips down for almost all 15 minutes and just went for submission attempts, went for some great ground and pound, just stayed on top of him, wouldn't let Phillips get back to his feet, and just sapped the gas tank, which is kind of weird in retrospect because Phillips was dismantled by Chimaev in similar fashion. Obviously, he shut down a lot sooner, but similar fashion. And then Chimaev, oddly enough, was working with him to warm up in the back room to, I guess, go over some takedown defense because they knew how, effective the Iron Turtle would be, Jun Park, but it wasn't enough. Phillips ends up taking an L, and we pick up a solid W. And one that, again, I don't think was a good decision for us. Fares Zayam defeats Jamie Malarkey. Malarkey, 20 strikes, 5 takedowns to Zayam's 47-1. Most people, including myself, thought that Malarkey won rounds 1 and 2, and then Zayam ended up picking up round 3, but it wasn't a 10-8. It was easily a 10-9, and I think this probably should have gone the other way. Is what it is. It was a close fight. They weren't really, they weren't scoring takedowns super high. Otherwise, Gamrot would have won his fight too, I guess. Just the way that certain judges see it. Just like umpires in baseball, these guys get different perspectives on things. So it just kind of is what it is. And one that, again, I think it was a bad stoppage now. Maxim Grisham defeats Gazmaret and Tikalov. And Tikalov thought the round ended when he was waved off. It was only, I think, officially 2 seconds left in the fight when he was waved off. But Antikalov was covering up. He was catching shots, but I think in his mind, he wasn't taking a lot of damage. He was sort of bouncing on the cage, and Grishin, I think, was going to tire out, basically, at the end of the round. He might have punched himself out, which is what I think Antikalov was going for. He looked very good in the first round, Antikalov, very patient. He didn't try to put the gas on. Then in the second round, he put it on a little more, and I thought that he honestly was winning the fight. I mean, that round 2, the way it ended, obviously, probably gave it back to Grishin, but it would have been 1 round to 1 round, and then Antikalov might have been able to go out there and pick it up. Who knows? It's one of those things. Antikalov just doesn't perform to his numbers. I said this earlier. I had him as kind of a bonus pick on the Patreon because his plus numbers were so good. I think it was too silly to pass it up. Obviously, it didn't pay off. It just kind of is what it is. But I don't know what's next for Antikalov. I think this is 4 straight fights he's lost in a row. I don't know what to say about the guy. He hasn't won since May 13th, 2017 in the UFC. So, hey, I don't know. Bellator's a knockin' buddy, I'm sure. We'll see you over there with Scott Coker. Next one, Syed Magomedov defeats Mark Striegel. This was a debut fight, so not a whole lot of weight into it. Same goes for the Gamarot fight. Not as many stats. Although Gamarot does have a pretty long resume in terms of Polish or regional MMA scene. But anyways, Syed Nurmagomedov defeats Mark Striegel early on, 51 seconds in round 1. Just catches a hard shot, goes down. I had Striegel projecting to win, but hey, he didn't have enough time to work, and so we ended up picking up an L. So like I said, we finished the night really well, right? Normally we were doing well at the beginning and struggling to hit the main. This time we hit the main, the co-main, the top 3, and just struggle the rest of the way of the card, except for Park, who we do nail. Now, some of those calls I think were bad. Some of them were weird decisions, but hey, it is what it is. We can't control that. We came in 4-7 overall, and I think we nailed the fights that really had the best information for the most part, like the Ortega fights, like the Andraj fights. I think those are the fights you really want to hit when you're looking at stats because you got a big breadth of them, and depth is the key when it comes to statistics. All right, so we got to move on, though. We got a big show coming down, and I got something to say about the Khabib-Gaethje fight. I got a few words, if you will. Let's get into it. Here's that part of the show. All right, so I've gone over this fight a couple of different times, and I'm going to hold off on what I think is the clear dividing line between win and loss projection. Now, Khabib Nurmagomedov, the guy really needs no introduction. I don't have to tell you how dominant of a ground and pound wrestling-based fighter he is. He is the best in the business. He's basically pound for pound best. If John Jones, was in jail right now, it would be cream of the crop if there ever was one. His takedowns are enormous, right? He scores about 5 per 15 minutes. The guy's never really been taken down himself. His striking, as we saw against McGregor in round 3, can stand up even to the best strikers out there. However, Khabib has never fought a guy quite like Gaethje. A guy with a phenomenal striking skill set, dare I say, on the verge of Conor. Maybe not as slick, but certainly effective, right? And such a high wrestling pedigree. Justin Gaethje is an All-American NCAA wrestler, high level. The guy obviously is a phenomenal MMA competitor. He's been was he 22-2 right now? I mean, the guy looks unstoppable. Look at how he dismantled Tony Ferguson. Look at what he did with his striking game. Look at how he outdid the boogeyman, okay? But all of that together, 19 wins via knockout, 1 submission, only 2 going to decision. All of that, everything about Justin Gaethje doesn't mean he'll win. Until I get to this last piece here that I want all of you to think about. And that has to do with who is coaching him. Now, on the Khabib side, we got AKA, we got Javier. Phenomenal coach. Coached a lot of champions, right? Luke Rockhold was there. Daniel Cormier, Khabib himself. A lot of guys go in and out of there. It's a phenomenal talent pool, okay? It's one of the best in the business. One of the highest rated out there. However, Justin Gaethje is personally trained by Trevor Whitman. And Trevor Whitman has a long list of champions. Okay, so let's go over some of them here. I'm just going to his Wikipedia page. I try to do a little research to back it up, and it looks pretty accurate if you ask me. At certain points in his career, he has trained guys like Pat Barry, okay? That's the fiance, I believe, Rose Namajunas. Oh, man, I almost got that one wrong there. Rose Namajunas. He's trained Todd Duffy in the past, Donald Cerrone, Neil Magny, Stipe Miocic, George St. Pierre, GSP, Rashad Evans, Shane Carwin, Melvin Gillard, currently Justin Gaethje, of course, Nate Marquardt, Dane Ludwig, trained Brendan Schaub. Not that that's like a high piece in your resume, but hey, if you're bros out there, he's certainly on it. He's trained this, and, last one here, recent, Kamaru Usman. So, when we look at that kind of resume for guys that he's trained, right, what's that make you think? Oh, he potentially is at least as good of a trainer as AKA or Javier Mendez. And so, what I did was I went and reevaluated it. And I gave the same weight to his coach that I gave to AKA. And with that, Gaethje comes out on top. He's my projected winner in this contest. Now, I just want to give one little caveat. I did some simulation modeling, and I only clocked him at like a 5% chance of winning, despite having the edge on the metric. The simulation only had him 5% of the time. But keep in mind, this guy is coached at one of the highest levels in MMA. Trevor Whitman is no stranger to training champions. He is no stranger to coming up with a game plan to beat guys that look unbeatable. Okay? And so when you look at Khabib, I'm not saying there's a lot of holes in the game. Right? You know, the pathway to victory against Khabib is fairly straightforward. Keep the fight standing. Don't get taken down. Fight him on the feet. Okay, I don't expect Trevor Whitman's game plan, to revolve around trying to take Khabib down and go to his world. It's going to be footwork. It's going to be pressure. It's going to be stopping the shots. And, this is just an anecdote. On the Joe Rogan show, Justin Gaethje talked about how good his takedown defense was when he was an All-American wrestler. He was a defensive wrestler. That is what he capitalized on, was preventing the takedown, preventing the shot. Now, I know he doesn't sharpen those tools in the cage, okay? He's not going for takedowns in the cage. He wants to be the human highlight. But he has trained now with Whitman, who has him on the game plan, on the system. He's not going to go out there and look like the guy that fought Eddie Alvarez, that fought Dustin Poirier, that put everything out it and tried to fight a war of attrition. When he went out and fought Tony Ferguson, he fought to a game plan. Okay, Whitman reminded him in between rounds not to lose his cool and to keep his head in the game. And when you have a guy like that in your corner, okay, and I know Khabib has a similar kind of guy, but Khabib's never had adversity. He's never had to get great advice in the corner to get out of a bad situation. In the Conor fight, in the Poirier fight, maybe after the Conor fight in the third round, somebody said something to him like, hey, let's get away from the striking. Let's take him back down. Pretty straightforward stuff, though, if you ask me. It's not a big game plan. It's like, hey, Khabib, go out and be Khabib. That isn't the advice that Whitman is going to give him. He's going to give him better advice, better game plan, because I think that he is going to have moments in this fight that are going to scare the confidence of Khabib. And that, in my honest opinion, has to be one of the ways to beat him. Make him doubt himself. I think I said it long ago, but if Conor McGregor had stopped that first shot in the octagon, not tried to go to mount, disengage, and fought on the feet, it could have created a scenario where Khabib doubted himself for an instance, and he could have capitalized on it. Gaethje has to do the same thing. He has to capitalize on opportunities that come along, prevent Khabib from getting the dominant position, and then I think he can win. Now, I said that Poirier was going to do the same sort of thing to Khabib. I said that he was going to go out and beat him, and that obviously didn't come to pass. But I also think that Dustin Poirier just, for whatever reason, did not execute his game plan. He was ragdolled, he was beaten up, it seemed like he was surprised at how strong and how good he was, and there's no reason to be that surprised when you're down an American top team trained by Mike Brown. I don't know what their game plan was going in, but it didn't seem like they had the right one. I think Trevor Whitman knows the pitfalls, knows the mistakes of other guys in the past, and he has a guy that he can mold to defeat Khabib. He has the wrestling base to present a challenge to Khabib like he hasn't had in a very, very long time. I think Abel Trujillo is one of the last guys that actually had some pedigree against him and tried to play in his world. But this time we have a guy that was born and bred in Khabib's base, in his world, in his wrestling background, and I think it's going to be enough. I think the game plan, the mental fortitude, the base, the talented striking, because let's face facts, Gaethje's striking is better than Khabib's in my personal opinion. It's maybe not as good when you start to tie in the fact that, Khabib's such a threat for the takedown. It certainly screws with your timing, screws with your ability to sit in the pocket. But I think Gaethje has it, and he's a projected winner on Saturday. All right, so that takes us to the co-main event where we're going to have Robert Whittaker, Bobby Knuckles, if you will, taking on Jared Cannonier, the Killer Gorilla. And this is going to be a really interesting contest, but honestly, I think our former middleweight champion takes it home. Now, the reason I say that is because we've seen Robert Whittaker deal so well with explosive power. He had a problem with timing and technique in the case of Adesanya, but not with explosive power when he took on Yoel Romero, and I know one of the fights was a little bit questionable. However, I think he can deal well with that, and, not to harp or say anything bad about Jared Cannonier, but he's not on the level of movement and style of Israel Adesanya. He's not there, he's not in the matrix, okay? And he's not going to be able to get it done. Now, that doesn't mean he couldn't connect with some power and knock him out, as guys like Hermanson and David Branch, right? Obviously, in Anderson Silva fight, I think, 10 years ago, Anderson Silva, if you put him in a time machine, would have schooled that version of Jared Cannonier. But hey, Anderson Silva is an old man now, and his best days are behind him. So we got to kind of take that into consideration with that win over him. But back when he was a light heavyweight, lost to Dominic Reyes, lost to Jan Blachowicz, lost to Glover Teixeira. He lost to the best of the best at 205, and Robert Whittaker at 185 is the best of the best. I mean, this is a guy that can easily get a rematch against Israel Adesanya. In fact, I think he will, honestly, if he beats Cannonier. And so I can honestly see Whittaker's style and technique being enough to overcome in this contest. Okay, so when we look at the just flat out numbers, better striking out of Whittaker, okay? I think the better wrestling game is out of Whittaker. He also, does have the reach disadvantage, okay? 4 inches, but we saw Whittaker deal with, rangy fighters before, and despite, not doing well with Izzy because of his movement, I don't think reach was the entire deciding factor there, and I don't think Jared has enough in the toolkit to take full advantage of that extra reach in the way Izzy did. So striking output, wrestling game, the better all-arounder, the guy that has performed under the biggest possible lights. We know he's a gamer. We're picking Bobby Knuckles on Saturday. All right, and the next one here, this one at heavyweight, we're going to have Alexander Volkov take on Walt Harris, the big ticket. And this one is an interesting fight, right? So we have an amazing striker, especially for heavyweight class in Alexander Volkov. I mean, look how he was schooling a guy the Black Beast, Derek Lewis. He was schooling the Black Beast until he threw that, misplaced leg kick. And he's going in against a guy that I honestly don't think is as good as Derek Lewis in Walt Harris. The big ticket's got power, right? But he just gassed pretty easily. We saw what happened when he took on Overeem. Granted, he was able to defeat Oleinik and Spivak, so he's got kind of a streak going against these Russian guys. But I think Volkov is not going to have to deal with any wrestling here. He has the solid 3-inch reach advantage. He's got some really technical striking. He's got the 6'7" frame. I think he has all the tools necessary to defeat Walt Harris. Now, getting back to our last fight, I talked about big power. Big ticket has that big power, okay? 13 knockouts, 13 wins, 8 losses, though, okay? He's been knocked out 3 times himself. So you give a lot, you're also going to take a lot. So I honestly think that he is going to end up taking an L on this one. I think Volkov just has the experience as well, 31-8. This guy, up until he ran into Derek Lewis, was on a crazy fight win streak. Obviously, couldn't deal with the wrestling of Curtis Blades, but that's not a factor here. Look what he also did to a guy with a lot of explosive power in Greg Hardy. Granted, the skill set's not quite what Walt Harris's is, but when we talk about power, he's dealt with that. He's handled himself well. The numbers back it up. I think the style backs it up, and so we're going with Drago, Alexander Volkov. All right, the next ones on the list here are debuts. We'll get to those at the end. We'll just state them real quick. I just want to let you know that we're missing quite a bit of data for some of these debut fighters right now, so we'll probably just put some picks somewhere, or if you ask down in the comments, I'll make sure I get them out to you later in the week, but we're just not there yet. So all of those, when they do get to them at the end of the show, they're going to be very preliminary picks, and don't put a lot of stock in him right now, if I'm honest. All right, let's move on, though, to the next one. It's not a debuting contest. That's going to be Mogamot Ankalaev versus Ion Cutelaba, or the Hulk. And so in this one, we got another fight. Okay, these guys having a sequel. They had that weird stoppage where Cutelaba seemed to be trying to bait Ankalaev, and who knows if he was halfway out on his feet. It's all sort of up in the air. Cutelaba said he was. The fight ended quick, so hey, they're running it back. They're trying to see what happens again. But honestly, I think it's going to be the same outcome. I think Ankalaev is going to win here. We saw what he did to Cutelaba very early on. Cutelaba had to resort to dirty pool, basically. Trying to trick him, lead him into a false sense of security. I think the striking and power, honestly, is better out of Ankalaev. Now, with that being said, both of these fighters do have crazy power, with 12 knockouts over 15 wins for Cutelaba, and 8 knockouts over 13 wins for Ankalaev. Neither one of them really resorting to the submission game all that much, with just the 2 for Cutelaba and the 0 for Ankalaev. So I see this fight just standing. It's going to be a big power matchup, and honestly, either guy could win, but I think the skill set, the way it played out in the past, I think Ankalaev has got his number, and I think he's going to take this one home again. So we're going Mogamot Ankalaev. All right, this is going to be an interesting one at heavyweight. We have Tai Tuivasa, who has not performed well very recently, but he's being given a bit of a gift, if I'm honest. He's going to be taking on Stefan the Skyscraper Struve, a guy that has also struggled. He's 1-4 over his last 5 contests, right? This guy's last one was in February 2019 against Marcos Lima, and then before that, 2016. Okay, 2016 was his last streak. Really, honestly, Antonio Silva, then Daniel Olmanchuk, and then bang. I mean, this was his win before the Lima fight was back on the Bisping versus Henderson 2 card. Okay, now I'm just making fun of his sort of situation a little bit, because he's not the most talented fighter. He's got a lot of size and strength. I mean, hey, the guy's 7 feet goddamn tall, but in this one, I think he actually will end up beating another struggling fighter. Tai Tuivasa has struggled thus far. He got way too much too soon in Junior Dos Santos. Struggled a lot against Bogoy Ivanov, who's a very competent fighter. And then they gave him another fighter a little lower on the ranks in Sergey Spivak, and tumbled he has. So I think that even though he has lost to some of the better fighters out there, and Stefan Struve isn't quite on the top of his game, but I think that Struve has enough. I think he's got enough of the size advantage. I think he has enough of the experience advantage. Tai Tuivasa is 9-3. Stefan Struve is 29-12. Struve has seen a lot of different comers in the UFC. I think he still has the motivation to fight, or he wouldn't be here anymore. I highly doubt he's just fighting out the end of his contract. I think he does want to continue getting paydays in the UFC, so I expect him to go out there and perform a bit, especially against a guy who's struggling. The last thing you want to do is, if you are going to retire, to go out with just a string of losses here, and cannot see the Skyscraper going out that way. So I am going with Stefan Struve in this heavyweight matchup. All right, the next one here, we are going to have a very, very fun Korean fighter in Da-Un Jung taking on Smilin' Sam Alvey. So Smilin' Sam Alvey, we talked about guys that are having a hard time lately. He's one of them. Last win, June 1st, 2018 against John Vellante, and it was a split decision win. After that, lost to Nogueira, lost to Crute, lost to Kilson Abreu, and lost to Ryan Spann as recently as May 9th. So 4 losses in a row, and it's not looking so good, especially when you compare it to the streak that Jung is on. This guy hasn't lost a fight since 2015, and he has been highly active for a guy that his age, which, speaking of activity, the guy is super active as well with his strikes, throwing 2-1 on average over Alvey for the 2 contests we've seen him in thus far. I mean, hey, I'm sorry to say it, but Smilin' Sam Alvey's just getting a little up there in age. He's not quite as good as he used to be. These losses are showing it on him. He also has the size disadvantage. He's coming in with 3-inch disadvantage, and I don't see Jung losing this one. I think he's got a great chance to go out there and get it done. So I am going with Jung in this contest. All right, the next one here, we are going to have 2 hot prospects in Casey Kenny and Nathaniel Wood, who actually goes by The Prospect. And in this one here, I like Nathaniel Wood. Now, he did struggle against John Dodson, but he came right back, got a solid win against Castaneda, and I think that he's going to be able to carry that momentum forward. However, with that being said, Kenny also with great momentum. I talked about him in the Heli Alatang fight and the Luis Smoka fight. He came through very solidly in those, and so it's going to be definitely a clash of guys that are really hitting their stride at this point in their career. But I like Wood here just a little bit more. I think that he has better knockout power, honestly, than Kenny. Kenny does have some grappling ability, but I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome Wood, who's only been submitted twice in his MMA career. I don't think the skill set is honestly high enough out of Kenny to get it done. We go ahead and here and take a look at some of the stats. We have the much higher striking output from Wood. We also have even better submission rate numbers and takedown numbers out of Wood. I think he's the better overall fighter. I know he was derailed by Dodson. He ran into a tough veteran, but Kenny's not a vet. He's not quite at the level that Dodson was at one point, and maybe he could be someday, but I think Wood is on the higher trajectory. He's the pick on Saturday. All right, then we have our last one here between Joel Alvarez and Alexander Yankelev. So, two solid competitors. We've seen good stuff out of Alvarez recently. Granted, he did come into the UFC and pick up a quick loss against Damir Ismagulov, but he got great wins against Joe Duffy and Daniel Bilardo, and I expect him to continue this. Whereas we've seen Yankelev struggle a bit, right? Since he's been in the UFC for a while, he did lose to Kamaru Usman back in 2016. Then he took a bit of a layoff after losses at Cummings. Come back in 2019. He's 1-1 during that time with a loss to Roosevelt Roberts. So I don't know how he's, bouncing back here. Maybe he came back from an injury. I'm not quite sure what his history is, but I don't think he's going to have enough to get it done on Saturday. I think that our Spanish fighter Alvarez has just looked like a much better striker, and despite Yankelev having a takedown advantage, I think that Alvarez will be able to do enough to defend that, keep it standing, and utilize the 3-inch reach advantage. So we are going with the Spaniard, Joel Alvarez. All right, then as I mentioned earlier, we have some real preliminary numbers right now on the debuters, but those are going to be as follows here. We're going to have Philip Haas taking on Jacob Malkoun, and then when I like Haas just a bit more, Malkoun is 4-0, and despite looking really good in MMA thus far, I don't think he has quite enough experience at this point, so I'm going to stick with Haas on that one, at least right now. Then we have Alex Oliveira, Shakarova, Rakhmonov. In this one, I like Rakhmonov. He looks like a really explosive fighter coming out of Kazakhstan, and he's getting a big order to make his debut against Alex Oliveira. But Oliveira has struggled off and on. He had 3 losses in a row: Gunnar Nelson, Mike Perry, Nicholas Dalby. Granted, he's been back to his winning ways with Max Griffin and Peter Sabota. But I think Shavkat Rakhmonov, Kazakhstani fighter, is going to be able to get it done, at least on the numbers that I have right now. Then we have another, this time a ladies contest, Liana Jojua taking on Miranda Maverick. And this one, I like Maverick. They have similar backgrounds as far as a win-loss record. We have Miranda looking really good in Invicta coming in, win over Pearl Gonzalez in her last outing. And I think she'll do well enough to get it done against Jojua, who does look good as well, but did have a loss to Sarah Morris this far in the UFC, so she'll be making her third fight in the UFC thus far. Then on our last one here, we are going to have Lilia Shakarova take on Lauren Murphy. And this one, I actually like Shakarova personally, and I think the numbers will shake out for her in the end. However, Lauren Murphy is projection right now, so we're going to stick with Lauren Murphy as the official, but I think that one honestly is going to change once a little bit more data comes out later on in the weeks as we hit the weigh-in times. All right, so with that being said, those are our fight picks for UFC 254. Once again, Gaethje, okay, keep that one in mind. Gaethje, Whitaker, Volkov, Ankalev, Struve, Wood, Jung, Alvarez, Haas, Rakhmonov, Maverick, and Murphy to round things out. So as always, we will be putting more fight picks on the Patreon. We'll be putting the probabilities there as well that I project. Granted, we did tease the one for Gaethje, and it's not very high, but I think he can squeak it out, and we'll honestly find out on Saturday. That's going to be one I am really looking forward to and have been for some time. If you'd like to get in touch with the Fighting Spirit Podcast, though, please reach out to me at fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with me on the comments down in YouTube, Facebook, wherever you like. Please hit me up on Twitter at MMAFightPicks01 if you'd like to get me there as well. There's also the Patreon as well. I know I mentioned earlier with the Fight Picks, but if you'd like to subscribe to that, I would thank you from the very bottom of my heart if you'd like to financially support the show at a dollar amount that makes the most sense to you. Also, another thing, we have a perk at just the $1 level. We're doing the liquor reviews there now. I wanted to kind of mainstream this side of the channel for just Fight Picks. So you're going to catch all of those reviews now over on Patreon. There's one up right now for a cognac that I think you guys will really enjoy. So please go ahead and check that out if you like. I would certainly appreciate it. All right, so we'll be back, of course, with a retrospective. I expect this one to be very interesting. We'll see if I have to eat crow on that main event. It's always likely to happen, right? 50-50. But coming up, we're going to have, things keep rock and rolling here. So we're going to have Hall versus Silva taking place on the 31st, or Halloween. That card is still coming together. This is all going to be in Vegas now, by the way. Then on the 7th, we're going to have Santos taking on Glover Teixeira. That probably is for a title shot. Glover Teixeira has been on tear as of late, so that one is certainly one to look out for. Then we have an unmain evented fight night on the 14th. We have UFC 255 on the 21st. That one is coming together with nothing too crazy to talk about just yet. And then on the 28th, we will have another fight scheduled with no main event just yet. So things are coming fast and furious. It's looking really interesting out there as 255 finally does come together. Of course, we'll have fight picks for that. So until I speak with you again next time, happy fight picking.